Delighted to talk to you. We Irish have typically no difficulty in talking. Now, talking sense is quite another thing. But we like to start you off with a short video. And this video is about imagination. And just to remind you that Einstein once said that imagination was so much more powerful than knowledge. So imagination is really what my talk this afternoon is all about, and how we can imagine a Kentucky, a new Kentucky, and how we can take this imagination across the world. So if we can turn those lights down just a little bit. Oh, we can't turn the lights down a little bit. We'll listen to it.
Imagine.
Better bottom line.
Imagine.
Knowing where my food comes from.
Imagine.
Knowing I can get better performance at a good price.
For more than 30 years, Alltech has been focused on safeguarding the sustainability of our industry. We have listened to our customers worldwide. Alltech research has reimagined the way we source our food. Alltech has developed a range of natural nutritional supplements which are good for the animal, the consumer, and the environment. Imagine.
Making science.
Imagine.
A supplier my company can count on.
Imagine.
You're good man. C'est pas charité.
At Alltech, we believe that only by fostering better education can we answer the challenges that the conflicting demand for food and energy presents. Imagine.
Feeding our animals to their true genetic potential.
Imagine.
Making the farmer's team work harder.
Imagine.
A totally sustainable farm with the help of Alltech.
Imagine.
Eating our way to a better life.
Imagine more than 2,600 people dedicated to delivering a brighter future for us all. Imagine no more. Alltech. Naturally.
So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of who we are and what we do. Very often I ask people, well, what do you know about Alltech? They say, oh, you make beer, or, which is okay. Or what you know about Alltech? Oh, you're the guys who are involved with the horses. Or what do you know about Alltech? And really when it gets down to it, the good news is they know very little about Alltech. And I want to share with you some of the aspects of Alltech, but most important, how do we take this, what I believe to be an entrepreneur's commonwealth, and bring it to the next level. Entrepreneurs, first and foremost, entrepreneurs are always and should always be frustrated. Not frustrated with success or not frustrated with failure, but frustrated that things don't get done quick enough. Frustrated. In the state of Kentucky, we have 800 people. And those 800 people include 200 which we have added in the last couple of years. And we'll probably add another 200 in the next couple of years. So we don't tend to think of crisis in the same way as others think of crisis, and we'll come to that in a moment. It's about jobs. We've invested $117 million in the state of Kentucky. Oh, by the way, we put $32 million on top of that into the games. Oh, by the way, that doesn't include the money that we invest at the University of Kentucky, University of Louisville. But in hard capital assets, 117, and we have $32 million that we spend payroll each and every year. That's going up, and that's going up. So we're sort of wedded to Kentucky. But jobs are more than jobs. A job's not a job. Come on. You have a little company with 4 people. Well, I've only got 4 jobs. Don't give me that stuff. 4 jobs, 3,150 jobs, means 3,150 families, which means 3,150 mortgages, perhaps, which perhaps means 6,000 plans. Plans for the future, for your children's future. So cut out this business about jobs. Jobs is but an indicator, and a great indicator, of dreams. So jobs and dreams go hand in hand. And ours is a message, is a story about dreams. So what do we have in Kentucky? You know, they used to say, God's own country and the devil's own people. Well, not quite. But what do we really have in Kentucky? Well, think about it. Food. Undoubtedly, the center, the heartbeat of the food industry could be argued to be right here in Louisville. The Yum Brands, the Kentucky Fried Chickens, and on and on and on. So we've got food. What else do we have? We've got our bourbon. I think it's $1 billion worth of bourbon exported from the state of Kentucky. We have our horses, probably a similar economic driver to bourbon. And of course, we have agriculture. And we tend to think of agriculture, well, then we have agriculture. Let me remind you, the only part of our economy which has gone up in the last few years is agriculture, 30%. I come from Ireland. And we're very proud of our Celtic tiger and the demise thereof, and we surely had a wake, as only the Irish can have, for their Celtic tiger. But the thing that didn't die, won't die, never will die, and continues to grow is agriculture in Ireland. And our heartbeat in the state of Kentucky, a part of it at least, is agriculture. It's about opportunities. I'm frustrated. I'm an entrepreneur by definition. I should be frustrated. I see opportunities everywhere. And as I see opportunities everywhere, I think, you know, on my mom's side, they made barrels and whiskey barrels for 5 generations, and I brewed for Guinness, and I have a master's degree in brewing and a PhD and all that good stuff. And then I see these barrels in the state of Kentucky, and I think, wait a minute, we got to do something. Do you know the state of Kentucky? And this has nothing to do with the chamber. It's a benevolent state. I didn't say socialist. Every time somebody is born in the state of Kentucky, we put 1 barrel of bourbon down so they can have a big party. The reality is we have 4 million barrels of bourbon maturing. And when those barrels are finished, what do we do with them? We ship them to China. And what do the Chinese do with them? They make them into furniture, and what do they do with them? They send them back to Kentucky. Now go figure. Go figure, how do we do something better with our barrels? And so we said, okay, why don't we at least get 1 more turn? Incidentally, you cannot reuse a barrel in the state of Kentucky. That's the law. You're not allowed to reuse a barrel. So what do we do, or what can we do? So one of the ideas we came up with, why don't we marry the brewing, that was one side, and my distilling side was the other, and we'll put our whiskey into a barrel. It's been tried before. We put our whiskey into a barrel. It's been tried before. Budweiser tried it. Sam Adams tried it, and it was appalling. Absolutely appalling. I didn't say Budweiser was appalling. But don't ask me for my personal opinion on Budweiser. But they couldn't do it, but we did it. And now we can hardly make enough bourbon barrel ale. And every bottle of bourbon barrel ale goes out to have a look at the label, please. Have a look at the label. It says bourbon barrel, and what name and what image is bigger than bourbon barrel? No. Thank you. Kentucky. See it right there. And I was in Beijing last week, and I had a bourbon barrel ale. And we're launching Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Ale. Not Alltech Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Ale, incidentally. Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Ale in Ireland in September. And so the opportunities are for us to do what? To become as big as Sam Adams. If we were able to take all those barrels, those 1 million barrels that we would get every single year, we would be bigger than Sam Adams. But we need to be careful. And this is not my pitch today. But we need to be careful because our laws, somewhat archaic, state that the bigger you get, the less you can do. So we can't give samples. Because the law says we can't give samples. So now you do a tour of the brewery, you can't have a sample because we got to be too big. So together we have to work on things like that. Town branch. I mean, the town branch runs under the city of Lexington. Here's a story. Everything is about stories. Kentucky is about stories. Business is about stories. Entrepreneurship is about stories. I'm flying on a plane with my son. And we're coming back from China a couple of weeks ago. How many of you are old enough, or brave enough, or courageous enough to say you remember the movie Goldfinger? Welcome to the Geriatrics Society of Kentucky, and me too. So I'm on the plane, and I thought, well, I'll watch some movies. So I watched this movie. Mark says, our son says, well, why do you want to watch that? I said, Goldfinger, James Bond. So James Bond flies into the bluegrass. And if you remember, he's with the pilot, and the pilot's Pussy Galore or something like that. Remember that? And she's there, she's beautiful and so forth. And he lands, and James Bond says, we're in the bluegrass state. And the finest drink in the bluegrass state is bourbon and town branch. I wake up. I rush back up to see Mark. I say, Mark. We rewind it, and sure enough, that was 30 years ago or more. J.R. Ewing, his favorite whiskey was bourbon and branch. And so there are opportunities there, and sometimes the brand is already there. We just have to capitalize it. Town Branch is the story of Lexington. And incidentally, talking about the story of Lexington, in September, we will open the first distillery to be built in Lexington, and I don't know how many years. And we're proud that our colleagues in the bourbon industry have seen fit to vote us onto the Bourbon Trail. It'll either start or finish in Lexington, Kentucky. And so now we have the two cities coming closer and closer, Lexington, Louisville, Bardstown. And this is a magnificent facility right downtown in an area which, quite frankly, was a little bit blighted. And you can begin to see the images, and we hope you'll come by and see us. Agriculture. We've got to use our local assets, and we've huge assets in our universities. Not just U of L, not just UK, Pikeville, and all these other universities. And so, for example, at Pikeville, at our symposium this year, we announced to some 3,000 people that we would set up a competition and we would give $20,000 to be awarded to whoever came up with the best idea for jobs in Eastern Kentucky. But we didn't want U of L to win it, nor do we want UK to win it, nor do we want the University of Pikeville to win it. We wanted them to work together. So the teams have to be one from each. And when it's over, they get $20,000. And when it's over, we will put some angel money, some seed money, into whatever the business is. Einstein. Imagination is more powerful than knowledge. And at the University of Kentucky, in the last 10 years, we've had something like 51, 52 masters and PhDs that we have funded. And we did not fund them out of the benefit or just out of charity, out of business. Out of business. And these kids have brought us to where we are, number 7 in animal health in the world. There's some big guys in front of us. Pfizer, Elanco. But without the help of UL and without the help of UK, we couldn't have done it. And we don't just do it there. University of Guelph up in Ontario. 19 PhDs, 18 master's degrees, peer-reviewed papers to go from here to Lexington, and out of that is a $150 million product. Embrace the universities, embrace education, and you'll drive jobs. Nutrigenomics. There's a little company by the name of Nestle. Google them. They make the Kit Kat. Nestle say that nutrigenomics is the way forward, and so there's Alltech. So what the heck is nutrigenomics? If you go on their website, they will tell you it's how nutrition changes our genes. How nutrition changes our genes. This is a gene chip. This is the genome. And this happens to be a genome of the soybean. About 15 plus years ago, the United States government spent $2 billion building the human genome. And today you can build your own genome for 50 grand. Or, very shortly, you will build it for 500. And this is the future of personalized medicine. It's also the future of nutrition. So we've used this genome in there, hence entrepreneurship. You go in and you go in fast. You not necessarily get it right, get it going. And so we went and we built this Nutrigenomics Center, the only one of its kind in the world. The only one of its kind, in Nicholasville, Kentucky. And there, we started looking at things such as meat quality. Because after all, we're in the food center of the world. So how do we produce a proper steak? And how do we produce that steak from beef here in the state of Kentucky? We're number 3 and number 4 in terms of raising animals. We have no packing house, effectively. We've got one in Louisville for pigs. And all our animals, did you know that every beef animal in the state of Kentucky has a Delta frequent flyer card? Just about. They leave here, they go to Kansas. From Kansas, they come back to Pennsylvania to be processed. And JBS, the biggest beef producer in the world, they're the ones who own the pig packing plant in the center of Louisville, say, this is ludicrous. And our university said, no, you can't raise beef animals in the state of Kentucky. Oh, you can if you bring them half a mile across the border into the neighboring states. But you can't do it here because we got the wrong temperatures. Get real. And they want us, with them, to put in a slaughterhouse. No, it's not a slaughterhouse, a finishing yard, and we will. And they've offered, and we'll slaughter somebody there, and they've offered $4 per hundredweight for every animal extra on the Chicago board, for every animal that's raised in Kentucky on our program. And here's why. You can taste the difference. You can see that in the meats there's an improved mineral status, better moisture content. It tastes better. And you can see the same applies to chicken. I went to Yum Brands. And I said, what are you looking for? They said, well, we want a chicken that we can honestly say is better. We want a chicken that doesn't lose so much moisture when you defat fry it, etc., etc. 2 years later, we delivered. Fresher, shelf life improved. It can be done all through, not genetic engineering, nutrition. And now we have 155 restaurants. 155 restaurants serving it. Why? Because tasting is believing. But now let's stop and let's think. Let's think outside of the box. Why is it that at Christmas you have the audacity to send a gift of steak which doesn't come from the state of Kentucky. It's Omaha steak. And let me tell you, anybody from Nebraska here? Good. I was going to say we all have our problems. But why can't we, in fact, do something different? And so this man, Tim Gannon, said, I've never tasted meat like this. So why not, in fact, take from that and create a business? A $1 billion business. And what's that business? Lyons brand, Lyons Farm. Not Alltech, because that sort of has a sort of a techie. How do you like your steak? With tech or without tech, you know? So why not have this Lyons brand? And that has resonated around the world. Not just beef, and not just chicken, but maybe pork, and maybe vegetables, built in and around the brand. Crop production. Is it the bluegrass state, or is it the burnt grass state? And we have a problem. And we have a major problem around the world because we cannot produce enough grains. The US produces 350, 400 million tons of maize, of corn. And we're the biggest exporters of corn, but it's a commodity. How do we improve production of our cereals? Back to the gene chip. We've noticed that people are feeding the grains, the flowers, the plants, in the wrong manner. And so we've gone back here, and with this, I mean, there was the so-called Green Revolution, and they really were the safeguard and the savior of places like Pakistan and India. Well, we've gone back, and with this gene chip, we've been able to give 10 bushels more grain per acre. And you see the root difference. And we've been able to show that that grain is more starch, more protein, and we've got 70,000 acres that we put on to this program in Iowa. And we don't have one single acre in Kentucky. And that has to change. But this is an amazing opportunity. 300 million, we think, will be the sales in 3 years. Our journey was to and from Kentucky. I quit Ireland. I left. Not because I had to, but I did. I left. I came, PhD in brewing, started an MBA. Oh, how many of you got MBAs? Let me tell you, I admire you from the bottom of my heart. Because I fought hard to get onto an MBA program, and then I fought hard to get off an MBA program. I couldn't stick it. And after 3 months, I quit. And I quit, and I moved on. I went to England, came back from England. My wife and I then came to the United States. We started with $10,000 on a place called Gold Rush Road. And it's only in Kentucky. You start on Gold Rush Road, and then you become successful. And then you go on to Cat, Nip, Hill, Pike. You try explaining that to people where your biotech center is, Cat, Nip, Hill, Pike. But Kentucky has always been our foundation. And our journey from Kentucky has taken us around the world. But our roots are right here. And so we're around the world, moving towards 1 billion, with a target of 4 billion within 4 years. And that's the target. And my young people are silly enough, passionate enough, gullible enough to believe. And I'm stupid enough to enable them to make it happen. And so we're there, and we're literally around the world. 120 plus countries. But to be successful, and for Kentucky to be successful around the world, she has to think globally, but act locally. Think globally, act locally. I was very impressed. A number of countries I went to, and I found that Kentucky actually had a department in different countries, which incidentally, for the most part, were manned by non-paid volunteers. And they were telling the story of Kentucky. So the infrastructure, in many respects, is out there. So how do we do it? How will we get there? All I ever wanted was an unfair advantage. That's what John Y. Brown said. And I'm the same. I want to go on a basketball court. I'd get murdered. I'd get killed. Still don't understand why they don't have me as a starting guard, but there you are. I want an unfair advantage. And my unfair advantage was curiosity, the curiosity of a child, and on a scientific basis. The curiosity of a child. And you send your curious people overseas, and they will come back with ideas. And no, it's not about sending more soya or more corn. It may be about sending some fantastic sire, stallion, what have you. But curiosity and science. Einstein said, I have no special talent, he said. None. Einstein said that. I mean, we think of him as this brainy guy. He said, no, I'm just passionately curious. So my challenge to the chambers would be, are you passionately curious? I know a man. His name is Ronan Tynan. Have you got children? How old? Okay, let's take the 21-year-old. He's 20, your child is 21 years old, 19 years old. And you sit down, or your husband sits down, the father sits down and says, you know what, we got a decision to make. And Ronan Tynan said, what's the decision? He said, we got to decide to chop your legs off.